Hey, this is Mr. Shrum, and I'm going to walk through the unit activity, the interdependence of ecosystems, and kind of show you some of the example answers for each part. This whole task is about designing an eco-friendly home. Part A asks you to look at the problem. What's going on with energy use in the United States? How does the use of fossil fuels affect the biodiversity in your own neighborhood and our surrounding ecosystems? And here's an example. You can read through that. That's talking about the supply and demand of these resources. There's money to be made, so that makes switching over to more cleaner energy a bit more complicated with, when there's people with money wanting to make more money, it's kind of hard to get stuff moving in the right direction. The burning of fossil fuels requires factories and power plants, and building those big plants and factories can structure and fragment, tear apart the natural ecosystems. And when you do that, that actually lowers biodiversity. And biodiversity is a key feature of our environment and how it adapts so well. When there are more and more plants and animals, the chances of an ecosystem dying or becoming very damaged is less, because the more options you have, the more diversity happening, the more adaptive the environment as a whole can be. Now, if you damage that or reduce the populations of certain species of plants and animals, well, that leaves the ecosystem and the biome more open to just more vulnerable in general. So say climate change comes in, destroys some species, well, then the rest of the species are more vulnerable and more at risk to sudden changes, or uh, they have to use scarce resources, and it offsets any balance that used to be there. Part B asks you to research a certain zip code area. I would pick your own, and that way you can look around. All right, so like, am I in the city? Am I in the suburb? Am I more in the country? What source of energy does my house use, and do most homes around here use? Usually electricity, some oil, natural gas, propane in some cases, depending on the area. It may be easier to transport certain types of energy. Are there cleaner energy alternatives available? Do you see any solar panels around you? Do you live by a body of water where you can use hydroelectric power? What's the climate like? The climate will determine what you put the energy use towards. So if you're in a cold environment, you need to use energy to heat your house. And the opposite is true. If you're in a very warm climate, you will need to put energy in to cool down your space. How does the city or town dispose of your household waste? Is it stored in a landfill? Is it destroyed by incineration? Do you have a recycling program or composting program locally? And then, does the region have any specific challenges? Does Oklahoma, Tulsa have any endangered species, habitat loss, pollution, or invasive species? And then after you answer all these questions, you should have about 1 to 2 paragraphs worth of information. So you don't have to go in depth exactly for every single question. This is more basic research about an area you want to research. Part C, specify your requirements. What are the types and sizes of homes in the region or the zip code you chose? So around here, there are lots of houses. It's more suburban feeling, and they're moderately sized. They're not huge houses. Whereas in the city, they may be closer together, less area per house or townhouse apartment area. Whereas the country, those houses are bigger, your neighbors are further apart, etc. Part D, what are some of the social costs, financial costs, climate constraints that you have to consider if you wanted to build an eco-friendly home in the neighborhood you chose or your own neighborhood, right? You have to consider the size, you have to consider the cost of money, the cost of, well, money that you have to spend to get certain things. Yeah, so money and space, time in certain cases. In E, I think most of our class is leaving this one blank. But you can analyze these three links and then research what conclusion can you draw about the emissions of greenhouse gases. If you can find the zip code, that's great. If you can't, just say, I couldn't find the zip code. How do the emissions compare across the nation? Is it better than the average? Is it lower? Is it higher? Let me know if you can find that information. It's okay if you can't. But part F is fun because you get to brainstorm, all right, what can I use to make a home more energy efficient? And here are some examples here. And I'll continue on. And then part G is something many students had a problem with, but you can draw something by hand and turn that in, and also go to Google Sheets. Google Sheets. And then create something in a Google Sheet, take a picture of it, and then turn that in as well. Whatever's easier for you, but I'll show you an example here. And it shows you the energy efficient light bulb they used, the windows, they had a little garden area, composting bin, and energy efficient appliances. So nothing too fancy, and a solar panel. This is all just for fun, practice. And part H is another thing many people had a problem finding. So I'll show you the answer to this one. And if you're not able to calculate that, say I was not able to do this. And that's okay. I'll show you an example later. And then part I and J are easier than H. I just explains ways you can do things better in the design. And then J, excuse me. So these are some example answers for I. And then part J asks you to tie human activity back into biodiversity. And then explain your reasoning. Here's an example answer for that as well. So yes, building eco-friendly homes can reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It can have a positive effect on the biodiversity. Fossil fuels require the construction of mines and oil wells, and all that construction can upset our natural ecosystems. And over time, reducing our dependence on those fuels and using more clean energy, renewable sources can minimize the damage to these ecosystems and help maintain biodiversity. So I think many people think we're just going to immediately switch over to clean renewable energy, but it's going to be more of a gradual process where, sure, you may use these fossil fuels in smaller amounts, but you do want to generally get most of your energy use and source the material from renewable sources like water, sun, wind, and geothermal in some cases. And then when those fail, then you could supplement with the fossil fuels since they are so dependable now, but you do have to consider the environmental costs. So I hope that gave you a better idea for this unit activity. And I'll go back through these example questions. You can see and then pause if you need a better look. And then that's it. Okay, so thank you guys. And then submit your final assignment. And then I will grade it as soon as I can. And I will see you all next time. All right, thank you guys, bye.